Okay, so now we're going to go over joint orientation a little bit and rotation order also. I'll probably split out the rotation order. That will be a really short video. But orientation, I left some joints that are not oriented very well in the spine. And I can see that if I grab my move tool and I make sure that my move tool is set to object, then I can see this red handle should be pointing straight up to the center of its child joint. And they are not. And that's because I moved them after I created them. So let me turn off the mesh, or actually let me just turn off X-ray. Okay, so those are not in line. And we want them to be. Okay, so there's a couple methods I'm going to show you real quick. So the first method is I'm going to go to the skeleton, orient joint option box. And I'm going to use these settings here. So to make sure I'm back to normal, I'm going to edit, reset settings. Okay, so we've got this joint orient to world checkbox. We don't want that checked. The primary axis is the axis that is going to point to its child. So in this case, it's the X, so the red handle, and my move tool should be pointing directly at its child, and it is not currently. That's the problem. The secondary axis is Y. That's the Y axis of my move tool. I'm going to tell it which direction it should point. And the direction that it should point is the secondary axis world orientation. So in this case, I'm telling the secondary axis Y to point in the world's Y positive direction. Okay? And I could change that to whatever I wanted. And then I like to uncheck orient children of selected joints, because I only want it to orient the joints I want it to orient. And then orient the local scale axes. So the local scale, it turns out that your move and your rotate have a different pivot orientation than your scale does. But you want those to all be in line. So you want the scale to line up with the rotation and the translation. So you leave that checked. Okay, and then this, don't ever use this, just use your move tool. If you toggle this on, it's going to turn on this little cursor here in the center of the joint, and it will, then you'll have to remember to turn it off per joint. It could just turn into a mess. Okay, and then I can click apply, and now that is done. I can see that the X handle points straight through the center. Y is pointing up in as best it can in the world's Y-axis positive direction. If I were to change this to negative and then click apply, then X is still going to point down chain, and Y is going to point straight down because it's the world's Y negative. Okay. I'll click apply and put that back how I wanted it. Okay, now the wrist is off a little bit because I shifted the elbow back, or the elbow is off a little bit because I shifted it back. I'm going to click apply. And then this may be off. We'll just click it just in case. Now the hip looks like it's pretty good because the order that I created it in. Remember, I went ahead and put that little bend in the knee, and then I used that, then I rotated the hip. And I use that as reference so I can snap the joints I was actually going to use to those joints. Anyway, if that's confusing, then watch the previous video. Anyway, so these should all be oriented correctly already. And it looks like they are. Okay. Now, let me go ahead and do this to the spine real quick. I'm going to click apply. Then I can pick walk if I want to. Apply. Pick walk. Apply. Pick walk. Go ahead and do it all the way up. Pick walk. Apply. Pick walk. Apply. Okay. So now I have oriented all the joints to the best of Maya's ability. Let me turn off my mesh. So if I select this root joint, and I go to Display, Transform Display, Local Rotation Axes, actually I want to select all of the joints. So let me undo that. Okay, so I'm going to select all of these joints. Then we go to Display, Transform Display, Local Rotation Axes. Okay, so each appendage should have all of these little things pointing the same direction. So like in the arm, Y is pointing up, X is pointing down chain, all the way through it. And if I zoom in, the clavicle is not, so I missed it. Okay. Well, if I select a joint, there's another way to orient these. Turns out on the clavicle, this is okay. But we could use Maya's Orient Joint tool, or we could just manually do it. To change these manually, you need to switch into component mode, and then you need to turn on this question mark. You turn off this points. Okay, that's going to allow you to select this rotate axis, orient. And then you can switch to your rotate tool, and you can move that however you want to. Okay, but that's not very precise. But it's possible. So you can get it close. Okay. So now you know that's a possibility. Now let's look at another place. I'm going to undo that because I actually want it to point straight out. That way. Okay. Switch back to my regular selection tool, out of component mode. Okay, so now if I look at my spine joints, this Y, the X is all pointing to their children. I already figured that out. But I want to make sure Y is always pointing the same direction all the way up. So we got Y pointing to the back. I got a few different things going on down here, it looks like. One of which the Y is pointing to the back. So I'm going to have to isolate my selection a little bit, my view. Y is pointing to the back. Y is pointing to the back. Y is pointing to the back again and again. So we're good. But sometimes you'll see this happen. So if I select this, and this is another method of reorienting joints as well. So if I go to component mode and select this joint orient, I come down to this mel line, this command line here. I can type in rotate space -R for relative, if I remember right anyway. And then I need to tell it how much to rotate. And if these are pointing, if the X is pointing to the exact correct location, but Y is not, or your secondary axis is not, then you'll need to rotate it in X, 180 degrees. So what you do is you just type in this little command, rotate space -R space 180 space 0 space 0, semicolon for good habits. And as soon as I press enter, this is going to rotate 180 degrees and Y is pointing the opposite direction now. Okay, that's going to be very important for you to understand, to realize how to do that. Okay, now while I'm on it, sometimes you want to edit these, and you kind of, like in the thumb, this is going to be really handy. You'll want to edit these, and you'll kind of need just to eyeball it. But you won't want to eyeball it with the manipulator, because you just won't have enough control, because you're going to want to be really picky. So what I like to do is create a little set of rotate commands. So if I press up on when my cursor's in the command line, it's going to bring back my last command. So I can grab this, I can select it all, and I can middle mouse click it and drag it up to my shelf. And ideally, you would create your own custom shelf up here for this, and tell it what kind of language it is. It's Mel. So click OK. Now I've got a new button. And every time I click this with that selection, it's going to rotate it 180 degrees in X only. Okay. So sometimes I want to rotate it just a little bit. So I'm going to change this X value to 5. I'm going to select that, middle mouse click it, and drag it up here. Tell it it's Mel. Okay. Now I'm going to say, maybe I only want to change it by 1 degree at a time, which I often do. I'm going to select all that, drag it up there. Okay, and sometimes I want to change it just a half of a degree at a time, because I'm pretty picky. Select that, drag it up. Okay, now I want to do the reverse of all those as well, so I'm going to do a -0.5. -1. And a -5. Okay, so now I just created a bunch of shelf buttons that are going to help me reorient this. And I can change the labels of them by going to the shelf editor. And generals, I'm on the general shelf, and the contents of that shelf is all down here. And right now it tells me what they are. Looks like I've been using this computer before or something, because there's some more up there. And you can name these however you want to. So I would change this one to 180.00. Or I could maybe just do 180, because I know they're all going to be in X. The icon label color, maybe I'll change this to red to indicate X. Okay. And then on this one, change this to 5 and red. This one's going to be a 1 and red. So we could, with our color scheme, we could say, well, which axes we're rotating in. It's likely that in the thumb you may need to rotate it by hand in more than one axis. So 0.5 color is red. Negative 0.5. These are all red. Negative 1. Negative 5. I can save shelves, and now they're all up here. And so I can click these and rotate it 180 degrees, or I can do it just 5 degrees at a time. And I can fine tune this really easy now, within a half a degree. Okay, and I don't have to try to use my manipulator, which is not very precise. Okay, so that's all you need to know about orienting joints.